All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to compare two processing knives for hunting big game. The Frontiersmen Vulpes and the Argali Sawtooth. Both fantastic options. I'm going to dig into what I like, what I don't like, and which one might be the best for you. Now, you're going to want to stay tuned because I'm going to tell you how you can win one of these knives later on in this video. Before we dig into the actual review, let's walk through my experience with these two knives. I got this one first. I had it in the spring and I processed a bear with it. And then later on in the year, I processed somebody's deer. So two animals from scratch, did them both with the Argali Sawtooth. Now the Frontiersmen I picked up this summer, and during my September guide season up north, I was able to process an elk and two moose. All three were bulls. And I had to cape out the two moose for mounts, which really gave me the opportunity to see what type of intricacy the Vulpes was capable of. I should also say I saved the hide from the bear and tanned the hide as well. So I definitely put the Sawtooth through its paces as far as how technically it could cut on that bear hide. Now, while I'm talking about guiding, I want to slip in a quick ad for Mindful Hunter Outfitting. So I acquired two different hunting territories in the past year, and I'm now offering archery, mule deer hunts in Alberta, and any weapon spring black bear hunts in British Columbia. If you want any more information about this, jay@mindfulhunter.com. These are booking up, but I still have some room for 2024. So if you're interested, get at me. I'm trying to take a somewhat interesting spin on offering guided hunts. I think there is an opportunity in that market to offer something a little bit different. And I would love the opportunity to help curate and build your next Canadian hunting adventure. So if that's something you're interested in, please get at me. Again, jay@mindfulhunter.com. Let's walk through the categories that I compared both these knives in. There were 6 total. I looked at price, weight, origin, blade, handle, and sheath. Starting with price, the Frontiersman comes in at $305 US, and the Argali comes in at $235 US. I will say the Frontiersman ships from Canada, so if you're in Canada, I know sometimes we get bent over when it comes to shipping, so there's a slight advantage to the Frontiersman for the Canadians. Now let's walk through the specs for each of these. The Frontiersman knife itself weighs 67 grams, which is just over 2 ounces, maybe 2.3 ounces. And the sheath weighs 72 grams. They have a semi-custom leather sheath, which is they have this like patented kind of, I don't know if it's patented, but I haven't seen anybody else offer it. There's like kind of a snap lock element to their leather sheaths. I also have a custom knife that Frontiersmen made me. This is a red stag handle, hidden tang knife, copper elements on the pommel and the handle. The pins are also copper. And then this kind of acid wash combined with a satin finish on the blade. And this is kind of my do-everything hunting knife. It has the same locking mechanism to the leather sheath. I wasn't a big fan of these sheaths at the beginning, but the more I use it, the more I love it. And it also comes with this Tech-Lock adapter, which I actually mount onto my shoulder strap of my backpack. And that way I've always got a knife handy. But I wanted to give everybody a quick look at this because, I mean, while Argali does a fantastic job of making stock knives that are kind of mass produced. Frontiersman is just now kind of getting into that hybrid custom market. And before, when he first started out, he was just making custom knives and then slowly added the Mountain series and the Ridgeline series. The Ridgeline series is what the Vulpes is part of. But I've known Tanner for a while now. He's a good friend. And I had him make me this one a couple years ago. And the quality of the craftsmanship is just unbelievable, the stuff he puts out. So regardless of how this review goes, if you're looking for a custom blade, hit up Tanner. It might take a little while. He's a pretty popular guy, but super high quality stuff. So back to the knife at hand. It's 7.25 inches overall with a 2 3/4 inch blade, 4.5 inch handle, and a full tang for stability and strength. Now, there is a 4-inch available, and to be quite honest with you, the 4-inch would have been the better head-to-head comparison, but I actually stopped into Tanner's when I was on my way up to my goat hunt this year, and this was all he had in stock when I purchased it. So I purchased this one, and I might as well, we'll get into the giveaway details now. So I said to Tanner when I bought it, I'm going to review this and give it away. And he was nice enough to say, well, if you want to give it away, I'll replace it with one of the 4 inches for your own use when it comes back in. So it's going to be, we're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I am going to give away this knife, and then I will also get a 4-inch knife, which I will do an updated review on and let you know how the 4-inch blade stacks up against the Argali and how it stacks up against the 2.75-inch blade. So for the full giveaway details, look at the description down below in the video. There's going to be a variety of ways you can get entries, from liking this video to commenting on an Instagram post, following both me and Frontiersmen, etc. But go down there, read the full details. Also, by the time this video releases, you can go to my Instagram account. I will have a post with this knife in the picture detailing, again, all the things that you can do to enter to win. Let's dive into the specs on the Argali. 66 grams for the knife itself. Again, just over 2 ounces, 2.2, 2.3 ounces. It is only 1 gram lighter than the Frontiersmen. For all intents and purposes, they weigh identically. Main difference is the weight of the sheath, 31 grams for the Argali with 72 grams for the Frontiersmen. Blade length is 3.75 inches with a 4.25 inch handle. And then again, it has this full tang construction layered with some highly textured G10. Moving on to the origin. The beautiful thing about both these knives is that they are made in North America. Frontiersmen is made in Canada, Argali is made in the States. So you're supporting local economies no matter which route you go. Neither one of these is made overseas. Now, as we analyze these 2 blades, I wanted to use a set of categories moving forward that you'll see in all of my knife videos. So we're going to look at metal composition, hardness, toughness, edge retention, ease of sharpening, corrosion resistance, availability and cost, and then shape. And I think what might be easiest is if we walk through each of these categories one at a time and go back and forth between the 2 knives so you can start to see the differences between the metal each of these knife makers has chosen. So starting off with composition, the Frontiersman is made with Nitro V, which is definitely one of the kind of newer, more sophisticated stainless steels that has added nitrogen and vanadium, which essentially increases its toughness while also increasing its corrosion resistance. The Argali is made from MagnaCut, which is probably the newest super steel, if you will. Now, it has added chromium, nitrogen, and vanadium, and it's trying to balance kind of edge retention with toughness. As far as hardness goes, the Frontiersman comes in at between 58 and 61 HRC. That's the Rockwell hardness scale. And the Argali comes in at 60 to 63. Now, you're going to see hardness, toughness, edge retention, and ease of sharpening are all interrelated. Like, the better edge retention you have, the harder a knife is to sharpen, because the harder the knife needs to be. But then the harder the knife gets, the less tough it is, which I know seems odd, but the harder you make a knife, the more brittle it can become. So steels are always trying to balance these 4 factors to create an ideal steel for whatever application. And in hunting, we deal with a lot of moisture. We deal with a lot of blood. We deal with tasks where you want a very sharp edge like caping, but then you also need a high degree of toughness because you could be prying into joints and, caping around the pedicles and kind of peeling hide away. So you're really asking a lot out of a knife when you use it for hunting processing. So that being said, the toughness of Nitro V is excellent. especially for a stainless steel. You can use it for prying. It's very unlikely to chip, extremely tough steel. Now, the MagnaCut also has excellent toughness. Now, I wouldn't say when it comes to toughness that one of these is the clear leader, but when we move on to edge retention, I would say the Frontiersman has good edge retention, but not quite as high as the Super Steel, whereas the edge retention for the MagnaCut, I would say, is exceptional. Now, that being said, the Nitro V is much easier to sharpen than the MagnaCut. I would say they're both reasonably easy to sharpen. They don't provide a great challenge, but it's definitely quicker and easier to put your edge back on the Nitro V than it is to put it on the MagnaCut. But I would say your edge lasts a little on the longer on the MagnaCut than it does on the Nitro V. Moving on to corrosion resistance, very good corrosion resistance on the Nitro V, partly due to the added nitrogen. And again, I think the MagnaCut would take the lead here. It is, I would say, an outstanding level of corrosion resistance on the MagnaCut, so a little bit better than the Nitro V. Availability and cost, the Nitro V is much more widely available. It's been around for a lot longer, so it's cheaper, easier to get. MagnaCut can be quite challenging to get and is somewhat more expensive, kind of driving up the cost of the knives that tend to use MagnaCut. Before we move on to the shape, I would say that Argali takes the lead here in the quality of the steel. I think if I had to pick one over the other, just based on steel, I would go with the MagnaCut. So let's move on to shape. Now, obviously, these are much differently shaped knives, and in some kind of very obvious ways, and in some much more subtle ways. Like, you'll notice there is a slight upward arc to the Argali, to the Sawtooth, whereas there's this kind of downward slope to the Argali. Much wider belly, retaining a lot of width right up into the tip. It's not like, you know, there's a lot of beef to this blade here in the Argali, where much thinner blade here with the Frontiersmen, and it kind of more naturally slopes in to the point. Both of them have jimping on the upper portion of the blade. There's also some additional jimping here on the kind of crook of the tang on the Argali. I'll get more into the handle material. A finer, almost more delicate handle on the Frontiersmen, and a kind of wider, rougher handle on the Argali. I will say, for tasks like skinning, the Argali is superior. Like, it doesn't take much to see that, like, when you're pulling back a hide, the kind of increased surface area, the greater curve to the blade, like, it's just a beautiful knife for caping. I did find you were really only using about 30% of the blade on the Frontiersman. Because of this point here, you weren't really using this back, 20 or 30%, and you don't want to get too close to the tip when you're caping, because that's where you tend to kind of pop through. It still worked well, but for skinning, the Argali was superior. Now, where the Frontiersman really shone was anytime you were getting into nooks and crannies. Like, I had to cape those two moose, and when you cape a moose for a shoulder mount, you actually have to tube out the legs. And so it was great that I could kind of lift that hide up and really work that blade in underneath, and kind of skin from the top and then skin from the bottom, and kind of connect those two portions and then pull that leg right out of the cape. The other thing that I liked about the Frontiersman, as far as the shape of the actual blade goes, and the combination of the shape and the handle, is that you tend to use this knife holding it like this most times. I liked that it felt much more comfortable to kind of use the Frontiersman more like a penknife, like almost with a more delicate hold to it. And this material, which we'll get into, provided a very nice grip. But again, we're talking about the shape of the handle, or the shape of the blade, but we can't really discuss the benefits of the shape of the blade without telling you how you can hold it. So kind of evenly matched in that way, in that this kind of excelled at the finer detailed cutting, and this excelled at the caping and kind of the bigger tasks, when you're processing. So that kind of moves us right into the handle. So the material that the Frontiersmen handle is made out of is called TerraTough. It is most comparable to something like a canvas micarta. It's made from polyester resin and fabric. Also, TerraTough is more shock absorbent than carbon fiber, G10, or micarta, and provides a superior grip. It has this like almost naturally sticky quality to it that your fingers don't tend to slip on. I don't want to call it rough, but it's not smooth either. Like it's smooth to the light touch, but you can feel and you can see when you look at it, you're almost looking, it almost looks like canvas or something. Like you're looking at the hashings. And I think that's probably that fabric that's part of this material. But excellent grip. When it gets wet, when it gets covered in blood, I never lost my grip. I never had problems holding onto the knife. And again, I could kind of have this pen knife hold to it and really get in and around things when you're, caping out the skull and going around the ears and trying to get the eyes. And this was great at kind of being able to hold in multiple different ways and still felt like I had an excellent grip. Now, it is a little bit delicate. It'll be interesting to see if the knife with the 4-inch blade has a bigger handle on it. I have pretty big hands. I wouldn't mind if it was a little bit bigger in diameter, but to be honest, it was a very comfortable knife. And like I said, 1 bull elk and 2 bull moose inside of 11 days and no blisters, no hot spots on my hands at all. Worked phenomenally well. Moving on to the Argali, it is a highly textured G10 handle. And this could put some people off. It's actually very rough. And it's the kind of thing you think might cause some wear on your hand. I did not find that to be the case. I was able to use this through 2 full animals and didn't have any wear spots, didn't have any blisters. But I'm not sure that's going to be everyone's cup of tea. It is very rough. So keep that in mind. The benefit of that is that when it's covered in blood or wet outside, you do have a very firm grip on this knife. So let's discuss the sheaths a little bit more. So basically the Frontiersmen, leather, 72 grams, Argali, Kydex, 31 grams. I think what I like about the Frontiersmen is the sense of craftsmanship. Like when you put this in your kill kit, you feel like it's the 70s and you're wearing your plaid jacket and Wranglers and you're going out to kill a moose at a family camp. Like it just has this like very traditional vibe. And that's a great feeling. However, I don't think it's the ideal sheath for the backcountry. It's just simply not necessary. I think and I talked with Tanner about this and he's having some similar thoughts, and I kind of see 2 options moving forward. I was thinking you just have a nice little add-on on the site where you could offer, like these Kydex sheaths are fairly inexpensive. You could leave this one at home for like your bigger kind of truck-based hunts when you don't mind a bit more bulk and a bit more weight, or when you're going to wear this directly on your belt. But then when you go into the backcountry and you're really just looking for something that's going to cover up the blade so it doesn't cut anything while it's in your kill kit, I think having an accompanying Kydex sheath with it would be a great idea. The other thing that Tanner brought up was thinking about doing some type of mini lightweight leather sheath, which I also find very intriguing because this obviously covers about 70% of the knife. And you have, a significant portion of the handle that you're covering somewhat unnecessarily if this is just going to be in a kill kit. And so maybe getting rid of this belt loop, because I'm never personally going to wear a processing knife on my belt, especially since I have my kind of EDC knife, the custom one Frontiersmen made for me that I carry on my backpack. So right away you could probably get rid of the belt loop and maybe shorten this up. And then offer people the option to either go with like a lightweight backcountry leather sheath or the full model here. But that, I think for me, the sheath really stands apart. This Kydex one is much better suited to the backcountry. This is a much higher quality, more semi-custom option for those people who appreciate kind of the finer things. Okay, with all that said and done, which one do I actually recommend? I mean, to be honest with you, I think you could really go either. And like I said at the beginning of the review, I don't really think it was a fair comparison to like do a true versus battle, because there are larger options from Frontiersmen and there's smaller options from Argali. And if I really wanted to tell you which one was superior, I would have used two knives that lined up more closely. But a lot of times I'm reviewing what I have and have available to me. These are the two knives this year, so I will continue this series and I will continue to add more knives to the review list and let you know how they compare against each other. But if you were just putting these two knives in front of me on a table and saying, for the next year, you can only use one of them to process animals, what are you going to use? I'm personally going with the Frontiersmen. There is something about the traditional kind of design of it, the handle, material, the shape of the handle, and the different ways that you can cut with it. Again, I think the 4-inch might be a little bit more up my alley. You know, you're asking a lot of a knife this size when you process two moose back to back and an elk the week before. But it certainly was up to the task. But I do think the fact that I do tend to spend a lot of time hunting bigger game as opposed to smaller game. But like for sheep or goat, I mean, this is your huckleberry, man. Like 100%. So I can't say that I'm basing the decision to go with the Frontiersmen off of any kind of data or evidence. It's more of a sentimental decision. So I don't know, read into that whatever you may, and you could go, you know, whichever one you want. As I stated before, I think the Magna Cut is the superior steel. So if I was going to maybe give the Frontiersmen a knock, I would say maybe look at potentially using Magna Cut in the future. And if I was going to give the Argali a knock, while the handle is functional, I don't know if it's my favorite thing in the world. Everybody is going with these skeletonized handles in order to drop weight. The problem is it does make it kind of funky to hold in some positions. Like this kind of like penknife stuff that you do here is not, because you don't have support the whole way down, it's not really possible with this. So maybe if I was going to offer some constructive criticism to Argali, I would look at a slightly less rough G10 pattern here for the handle and maybe give it a more curved feeling so it fit a little more naturally inside of your hand. So maybe this video is more of a persuasion or an attempt to persuade you to spend a bit more money on your processing knife. Instead of looking for the cheapest thing, when it's going to play that fundamental a role in the killing and the processing of your animal, let it have a bit more meaning and be willing to spend a bit more money on it. Like these are not cheap, $305 and $235 or whatever they are, they're investments, but they're going to hang around for a very long time, and I think it's well worth it. All right, one more time, if you want to win this Frontiersman knife, you can go into the instructions down in the description or over on Instagram and see how to win. I'll be giving this one away in a couple weeks, so it won't last too long. And if you could engage with the content any way, shape, or form, like, comment, share, subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And one more quick reminder, Mindful Hunter Outfitting is now live. So if you're interested in archery mule deer hunts in Alberta or any weapon spring black bear hunts in British Columbia, jay@mindfulhunter.com. And as always, thank you for tuning in.